how we recognize and combat burnout so that we can keep fighting. It's because the news cycle never stops. And I want you to hear this clearly. That is not an accident. A relentless news cycle is a feature of how this administration operates, not a bug. When there is a new outrage every 18 hours or less, no single outrage gets sustained attention, and the people trying to respond never get to put the weight down. We've been carrying that weight since Inauguration Day 2025, and some of us since the first Trump administration. So that's roughly 18 months as of today. And it has not been abstract. We've watched innocent people killed. We've watched entire communities live in open fear. We watched a small number of people reshape institutions that took generations to build. And that is not policy disagreement. That is grief, and it accumulates. On top of that, the economic pressure is constant. Costs are up, stability is down, and policy choices from this administration have made ordinary household stress worse, not better. Nobody organizes well while doing math about groceries. Two things I want to name specifically. First, if you belong to a marginalized community, you are not imagining that this hits you harder. It is not just news for us. It is happening to us, to people who may already feel pushed to the edge of this society. Second, those of you who are neurodiverse, meaning you have diagnoses such as autism, ADHD, or other brain differences, you may be even more at risk for burnout because we're spending energy every single day just to navigate a world that was not built for us. This is a tax we pay before we do any activism at all. And if you're both, self-care and community are not luxuries for you. They are load-bearing. Later tonight, Katie, one of our volunteer co-leaders, will share her personal experience as a neurodiverse working mom who had a mild burnout episode and how she has been recovering. So let's start here. Drop one word in the chat, just one word that describes how you are actually arriving tonight. Not how you think you should feel, how you actually feel. Could be tired, angry, numb, hopeful, whatever it is. Bonnie said tired. Paisley said too hot. I think that's a lot of us. Tired, exhausted, depleted, angered, sad, exhausted. So it sounds like a lot of us are in the same position. Nobody here is the only one. So let's get precise because burnout gets used loosely and that costs us. The World Health Organization added burnout to the ICD-11, which is the International Classification of Diseases in 2019. Worth knowing, they classify it as an occupational phenomenon, not a medical condition, and they are explicit that the definition is meant for the work context and should not be stretched to cover every area of life. But the three dimensions they describe map onto activist life almost perfectly. And many of us consider this our work or a second job. So number one, energy depletion or exhaustion. Two, increased mental distance from the work and feelings of negativism or cynicism about it. Three, reduced sense of effectiveness, the feeling that nothing you do matters. Sit with that number three for a minute. A reduced sense of effectiveness is not laziness and is not a character flaw. It's a documented symptom. Here's the part that I most want you to hold on to. WHO frames, as in the World Health Organization, frames burnout as resulting from chronic stress that has not been successfully managed. And researchers who study it consistently point to the mismatch between the demand placed on a person and the resources they have to meet it. Notice where the problem sits. It sits in the mismatch, not in the person. Your burnout is not a personal failing. It is a systemic red flag. It's a symptom of overextension inside systems that demand relentless engagement and then act surprised when people break. Movements do this to their people, funders do this to organizations, and news cycles do this to all of us. That means the fix is never only individual. Yes, you need to rest. And also, we need to build a movement that does not run on people quietly grinding themselves down. We need to do both.
If you immerse yourself in this world for long enough, you will either experience or see someone experience burnout. So these are the early warning signs. You cannot prevent what you cannot see coming. So here's the list. I want you to notice which ones land with you. Physical signals first, because the body usually knows before the brain admits it. Abnormal fatigue, not I had a long day tired that sleep doesn't fix. Physical pain or illness, body aches, neck or back pain that will not release. Something minor that just will not resolve, a cough, a headache, a stomach thing that lingers for weeks. Sleep disruption, trouble falling asleep or waking up exhausted. The specific one to watch for is waking in the middle of the night with a racing mind and a fast heartbeat. That is the day's pressure and that endless to-do list coming back for you at 3 a.m. When that starts happening, the move is to sort the list into what you can control and what you can't, and then put only energy into the first pile. Then the performance signals. Lower productivity at work, most of us have jobs. When your boss starts asking why deadlines are slipping or why you've gone quiet on email, treat that as data, not shame. Reacting instead of responding. This is one worth pausing on. Reaction mode is dangerous. If you notice you're reacting, you are almost certainly running on emotion and overwhelmed rather than judgment. When you catch it, pull back to what is actually yours to carry and put deliberate breaks into your day. Being short and angry more often. If you are snapping at people, if your patience is basically gone, your runway is getting short. Watch for being harshly critical and watch for small things setting you off that never used to. Then the emotional signals, which tend to arrive last and hurt longest. Cynicism and skepticism about work you used to believe in, feeling powerless, withdrawing, feeling isolated, never having time for friends, hobbies, or anything that refills you, hopelessness and pessimism, and emotional numbness. I want to explain that one, because people scare themselves with it, feeling numb is usually an unconscious protective response to emotions that are too big to process, whether from anxiety, chronic stress, or trauma. Clinicians treat it as a form of dissociation, a way the mind shields itself from pain. If you are numb, your system is not broken. It is protecting you, but that it is also telling you the load is too heavy. And mood swings, irritability, confusion, or anger that arrives fast and hard. In the chat, which of these signals have you noticed in yourself in the past month? Can you list individual symptoms or just type several? No detail required.
All right. So just to read some of those off, some people said all, several. Aaron said pain, a short fuse, many, all of them, several, but mostly hopelessness, losing my temper. I said pain from bending over to paint banners all day. Katie said irritation, a bit more headache, less able to mask non-neurotypical behaviors. Well, here's something to reframe this for a lot of people. Emily and Amelia Nagoski, in their book Burnout, make a distinction that matters enormously for activists. Dealing with the stressor is not the same as dealing with the stress. Their point is that the stress response is physiological. Your body ramps up to fight or flee, and it needs a signal that the threat has passed before it will stand down. Removing the stressor does not send that signal. So you can win a campaign, pass a bill, stop an ICE arrest, and still be carrying that stress in your body afterward. And for us, the stressor mostly does not go away, so we have to complete the cycle deliberately. The strategies they lay out are ordinary on purpose. Physical movement, which they call the most effective one, slow breathing, especially long exhales, laughter, the real belly kind, affection, including a genuinely long hug, crying on purpose with a movie if that's what it takes, creative expression, which makes space for big feelings, and meaningful connection with other people. Notice that none of those require you to solve anything. They just tell your body it is allowed to stand down. So let's do one right now. This is the roar technique, and it takes about 90 seconds. You can close your eyes or leave them open if you want. Step one, remember. Notice where your mind has wandered. Remember why you are taking this minute for yourself. You're right here, right now, nowhere else. Observe without any judgment. Check your body. Where is the tension? Don't fix it yet, but chest tight, jaw clenched, shoulders up by your ears. Just notice. Step three. Now, 3 slow breaths. In for 4. Put your hand on your belly and breathe in until you can feel it expand. Out for 6. Long and slow, all the way to the end of the breath until your belly deflates. That long exhale is what down regulates the stress response. So breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Step 4 is appreciate. Appreciate that you took this minute. Appreciate the awareness you just practiced. And appreciate yourself, the effort, and the care that you put into this work. Step 5 is resume. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel the chair under you. Come back to the room with a little more clarity. That's it. That's a tool that you now own, and it only costs 90 seconds.
I just want to put a fine point on something that Tiffany said. Never underestimate the power of a hug that when you see somebody having trouble burning out, it can make an enormous amount of difference to somebody that's having a hard time. 6 things that do actually help. 6 practices. I will name them all, then say a sentence or two about each one. 1, acknowledge when you need a break. 2, build self-care into the activism itself. 3, use breathing and mindfulness. 4, celebrate small gains. 5, support each other. And 6, remember you are not alone. 1, acknowledge when you need a break. The goal is catching it before you crash. Learn your own tell. For some people, it is impatience with fellow organizers. For some, it is dread about the week ahead that was not there a year ago. For some, it is the creeping belief that change is not possible. Check in with yourself at the start of the day briefly. If you are underwater, write 2 lists, what you can control and what you can't. Then act on the first list. Perspective is a resource, and that exercise restores it. 2, build self-care into activism, not after. Figure out what actually refills you, then protect it like a meeting. For me, it's podcasts hosted by my favorite comedians. For you,
Oh, sorry. These were notes when I wrote it. So these are for me.
hey, I'm all about podcasts too, so I'm willing to take it. If you maybe it is time with a friend who has nothing to do with organizing. Maybe it is rewatching a show that you've seen 9 times. Set edges around the work. Designate days off from activism and say no email on your days off. Pick one or more events each month where you feel comfortable letting others take the reins if you're an organizer, or skip attending an event if you need to. Saying no to one thing is how you keep doing the other things well. 3, breathe, mindfulness, meditation. We just did it. Rest and reduced sensory input and reduced sensory input are what let the brain function well. This is maintenance, not indulgence. 4, celebrate small gains. Your work and your worth are not defined by the outcome. You belong in the moment and you are an asset to it. Take the time to mark what you achieved. Follow at least one source of good news so you remember why you started. The Daily Beans podcast has a good news section at the end of each episode that is great for this. And take the long view. Every step is still closer than we were. Treat this as a lifelong commitment, which means pacing yourself is not a compromise, it's a strategy. In this world, there may not be very many wins, and it may seem very hard to accomplish anything. So take the wins that you can and let that make you feel better. 5, support each other. Organizers should make room for honest conversation about burnout, which is literally what we're doing tonight. Other things that work, mentorship or buddy system pairing experienced folks with newer folks. If your group does not have that, build the space informally with your peers. Usually all it takes is one person willing to break the silence first. If you're interested in being paired with another activist as a mentor or mentee, just email Tiffany. I'll put her email in the chat. 6, remember you are not alone. If you are feeling like you are not enough, tell someone you trust. Humans were not built to do this alone. Generations of activists came before you, and generations will come after you, and all of them have experienced burnout. You are one link in a very long chain, and no single link has to hold the whole weight.
So boundaries are the guardrail. Without them, we bleed everywhere. 6 domains. Time boundaries, fixed hours, buffer zones between things, and protected no activism hours. You need blocks in your day and your week where you are not permitted to do or even think about the work. That is not optional. Emotional boundaries, not absorbing everyone's suffering, refusing to carry weight that is not yours. Activists are natural givers, and that generosity is exactly what turns into injury when it has no limit. Digital boundaries. Cut the doom scrolling, cut the notifications. I had to turn my Signal notifications off and just check a few times throughout the day. And stop compulsively checking email, texts, and socials. Our brains do not work well under constant bombardment. There are apps that will block specific sites and mute notifications for you. There was actually a study about how many points your IQ drops when you check email constantly throughout the day, and it was a pretty significant number. Task boundaries. You are not responsible for everything. Delegate. Decline politely. A well-run group has many hands, not one exhausted person. If you're a group or organization leader and you don't feel like you have enough people to delegate to, consider adding to your leadership team. I wholeheartedly value all of our co-leaders, and I will say the most immediately useful position in the area of delegation is our volunteer coordinator, Katie, who we'll hear from in just a little bit. Also, don't feel silly if you haven't thought of this already. It took a long time before I seriously looked at expanding the team beyond Morgan and me because I thought I didn't have time for it. In hindsight, I wish I'd done it much sooner. And that reminds me, please thank Katie and Sean for putting this outline together tonight. Next one is relational boundaries with colleagues, community members, and funders. Protect your dignity, your time, your emotions, your space. If someone runs over a boundary you have already communicated, that is not your failure. If they keep doing it, distance is a legitimate answer. Value boundaries. Refuse work that violates your ethics or feeds something toxic. It's easier said than done, and the fact that you're even trying deserves credit. I finally had to say no more when it came to organizing with certain people because of their toxic and drama-seeking behavior. It was dragging me down and making it harder for me to want to keep on organizing. After one big event, I had a major case of burnout myself. I literally spent a week in bed binge watching The Expanse, which is a great show, by the way. But I was only able to put in half the effort for a while, across a lot of parts of my organizing life. Um, so think of boundaries as a sacred edge, not walls to shut people out, contours that let you breathe and keep going. And the same point again, because it is the one that matters most. Overworking always takes a toll, mentally and physically. Saying no is hard, but do it anyway and do not feel guilty. Know your capacity. Spreading yourself thin does not mean more gets done, it means everything gets done worse. In the chat, name one boundary you're going to set this week. Be specific, like no email after 8 p.m. Oh, that's great. That you're starting a self-care Zoom meeting for that's going to happen every week. That's awesome. Time to watercolor. All right, that's a good one. And now I want to hand it off to Katie. Katie is one of our volunteer co-leaders, as I mentioned. She's going to talk about her own experience in her own words as a neurodiverse working mom who went through a mild burnout episode and has been recovering from it.
Um, Hi everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Well, on boundaries, one important thing is I told my husband and son that I will be in here on this call and speaking, and they need to be responsible for getting the little man's dinner and evening stuff done. So reaching out to your support network is definitely part of that boundary. So anyway, about me, I am in Denver. I'm a mom. Um, I have a husband and I have a 9-year-old, and I have a 21-year-old stepson who is, um, he's been in the Marines for 1 year. And of course, with the war in Iran going on, that's just kind of ongoing stress of, well, will current events affect him or will they not? Because no one seems to be making up their mind about it. And as far as work, I'm a paralegal at a really small women-owned law firm, and I'm also neurodiverse. I'm very, very mildly on the autism spectrum. Let's see, my burnout actually, so it started when we had a bunch of transitions at work. So one thing to point out is, yes, we've been talking about burnout as far as with activism, and that's the focus of this group. But I want to also acknowledge that something outside of your activism could cause you to burn out because, like, maybe it's work or maybe it's like a relative gets sick or something, and it's just like an additional life stressor. But the news has just been like pushing up against us, and we're trying to push back, and that just adds to everything else we have on our plate. So that's was where I was at. So we had um, a lot of staff transitions at work, and um, as paralegal and bookkeeper, I was doing a lot of extra training for people that were coming in and doing a lot of bookkeeping stuff for people and payroll stuff for people that were leaving and then onboarding. And it was like yeah, we had about 6 months of that at work. And the whole time I had to keep going with paralegaling, and one of the attorneys came to me and said, my documents, I put them in your inbox, and then they take several weeks to get back versus turn around within a week. And that's obviously pushing client deadlines, and Tiffany knows that, oh, yeah, document proofing and generating for attorneys pretty important. So the fact that they
Yeah.
were all getting stuck in my inbox, I was getting through my inbox and I was getting through my email. I just felt like my brain was swimming through jello. And earlier in the in Tiffany's presentation, she mentioned that ROAR, and part of that acronym, I forgot the acronym now, but it just seemed like rest and awareness. Like I was just going through the motions. I wasn't aware. I would feel my brain feeling like sludge, but I thought, well, getting through my documents, getting through my email, but I didn't really sit and be aware of, oh, that's been going a lot slower. And, it's someone else often that it was my boss that pointed out, hey, what's going on? And luckily, she was super supportive, and I got some resources to help out with like productivity, and a career coach was talked a lot about this awareness and kind of being aware of like how long a task takes at work and when are you taking brain breaks to kind of practice that deep breathing that again was addressed the in the presentation. And as far as sensory stuff, like I didn't notice it until my boys pointed it out that if we were at King Supers or Costco or something, and my spouse asked me a question about something, and I told them it was on the list like several different times, and I'd be snapping at him in the aisle of King Supers, like, yes, we need this. And that was happening every single grocery trip. Again, I wasn't aware of it, but he very gently pointed it out. We do not need you to sit snappy at me on every grocery trip. Sorry. But again, it was like, did I recognize it right the first few times? No. It took several months. And also, when I had time to rest, like Memorial Day, we had 3 days off. We had, yeah, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And we had a family barbecue on Monday, but the rest of the time I slept. And that's when I realized, oh, maybe something is going on. And I would find that work snacks, I liked them, but sometimes they didn't like me back. And um and just all these things were building, and that's when I started. Luckily I didn't have much after the No Kings 3 to really deal with volunteers, so but I did let Tiffany and everyone know I was kind of less active in stuff the last few months. Um and um and I did someone recommended to me, um like, don't listen to 2 hours of NPR after the end of the workday. Probably not
Yeah.
great. And maybe don't listen to news podcasts on your commute on the light rail. Um, and then, um, as far as like sensory stuff, um, I have fidgets at my desk, and sometimes I use those if they're, if I'm just proofing stuff and I need something to fidget with. And our printer broke, and my desk is next to the printer. And so when the printer guy came and he was drilling away at the printer, I put my earbuds in and I put some music in, and I proofed a not as hard document because I was like, you know what? That's gonna bug me a lot more now than it used to. So I was not afraid to like give myself kind of that grace to be like maybe my sensory threshold is lower and um maybe um my and I would sometimes not go to the store as much with the guys because well maybe that's a lot. So how did I start getting out of this hole? First of all, I guess in the chat, does hearing some of this like relate with you guys or um help to kind of hear first person like say, "Oh yeah, that was me." Okay, yes. Uh-huh. Okay. So, how did I get out? Well, honestly, I really really have to give credit to my bosses. Um and they've been super supportive. They were the first ones that let me know that there was a problem, but instead of being like, "Well, we're going to cut your salary or we're going to blah blah blah." They're like, "Let's offer you some resources." Because I have been there a while. Um and so like coaching with they had a business coach come in and um have a conference with me for like an hour to talk about practical ways to deal with productivity at work. I also have an outside counselor that I talk to a lot about, like, here's where I'm stressing out about Daniel. And my aunt helped a lot because my cousin was in the Marines. And so I was like, well, maybe I should call Jan a little bit more. Um, Honestly, just knowing that there's a group of you guys that are doing stuff and like Tiffany and Morgan are like doing this full time and just seeing that people are trying to push back or um when I read stories like, um, "Oh, this group was pushing back in this area," or this like, there's um like when Denver got the flock cameras blocked temporarily. Um, just, like, little wins like that locally or that I would see on the socials. It's like, "Okay, okay, we're not people are pushing back, there's still hope, that's good." And then, like, practical and I have to shout out my guys too because, um like, there was times when I'd come home from work when I was catching up on, like, my inbox that I'd be like, "Okay, I need to come home, lay down, and rest and not do anything," and my husband and son were supportive. My son might have gone to bed an hour later than his bedtime because dad's not used to putting his foot down at bedtime like I am, but,
Mhm.
they were super supportive, and, um honestly, like, seeing some good news, like, y'all remember when we sent people, like, to a flyby around the moon? Like, my guys are sci-fi dorks, so they thought that was cool. But honestly, just looking at the news at, like, "Hey, there's good things that people are focused on in the news cycle right now." That's kinda cool, and, kind of a distraction, but it's kind of adjacent to the nerddom that and, like, stuff like the guys and I have gone to a few movies this summer, and just stuff like that has helped. Um, I guess I'd ask, like I know my boss was cool and had, like, a bunch of resources, so, like, I guess what resources do y'all think of that you could have access to right now or, like, look for to maybe help yourself come out of burnout or, like, prevent it, like, do some of these things that we talked about? Oh, no King's protest, yeah, so that you're not alone. Oh, Someone said Odysseus. I have to get close to the screen to read because my eyes aren't great. Odysseus, the best of all time because conservatives hate that movie. Someone put that in the chat. So, what things have what ways or like resources do you guys have that you can like call on or think about accessing to help you guys? Just after hearing me talk about it firsthand. Meditation. Tiffany, you can read some of these out since don't have since I
Yeah.
face on the screen to read them.
Um, Sorry, I should have volunteered. Michelle said, I just saw a YouTube about productivity and focus at work. A break every 1.5 hours is proven helpful, and encouraging play during those breaks is beneficial. Ooh, my dog will like that. Being quiet during those breaks, etc. Meditation. I've been trying to enjoy light, fun media without guilt and just allow that joy in it. I resonate with that, Annie. I sometimes think, oh, I shouldn't be listening to this podcast. I should be listening to the news so that I'm more informed. But I have to remind myself that that's how I take a break. Therapist and support group, getting out to my garden regularly, being quiet, observing music, getting out into nature, taking walks, nature. I took a class at Doug a little bit ago. It was great. My dog, my cat, play with my cats. No billionaires ruling also. Being mindful during my daily walk with my dog, and the list goes on, Katie.
I'm about ready to wrap it up because I'm recognizing that
Okay.
my
That's all
talking
right.
my talking battery's getting low. But Tiffany wanted us to end on what gives you hope. So I guess we could, unless Tiffany has some
Yeah.
wrap up stuff. What gives you hope, guys? And guys,
Yeah,
Tiffany
we
Morgan,
have a
thanks for letting me speak.
thank you so much, Katie.
While you guys think about hope, I'm gonna chime in with a few things I want to highlight before I get back into it. The first is I was there with Tiffany when it was just the two of us, and we were heading straight for a brick wall of burnout. And opening up and bringing more people in has helped so much. It has helped us be more productive and less overwhelmed and feeling like we're responsible for the entire world. And Katie, I remember when some of this was happening to you, and it's good to hear your story and how you were able to come through it, and I hope you're doing better now. It makes a difference to hear firsthand how it happens. Additionally, I wanted to highlight two things that Tiffany said in the last section. The first is boundaries. Um, you know, do not feel bad about setting boundaries. Say, this is my limit. This is as far as I can go, because if you go any further, you are going to be causing yourself harm. And people need to be able to respect your boundaries, or there's a problem. In addition to that, I really want to highlight it is okay to say no. A lot of people, especially leaders, can feel a lot of pressure to do a lot of different things. And at some point, you just need to be able to say, no, I can't do that. I've had a lot of people tell me no. And I just turn and say, okay, then how are we going to get this done? There's no hard feelings. There's no, thinking less of somebody. It's, you need to say no when you need to say no, and do not feel bad about it. So coming back recharged, last piece, how you come back. Remember why you do this. And I mean the real why, not the fear-based one, not I have to because the world is falling apart. That reason burns hot and burns out fast. Something more like I am working to make a difference for the next generation. I want my legacy to be that I did the best I could for other people. Being involved beats feeling helplessness. Find the version that is true for you and keep it somewhere you can see it. Remember, you are not doing this alone. You are one person in a room full of people, in a network of groups, in a tradition that stretches back generations. And remember, the news cycle ebbs and flows. It will not always run at this pitch. There will be periods when the country is quieter and the work is less urgent. And when that happens, you do not have to disappear. You stay involved at a normal, sustainable level. Politics gets boring sometimes, and boring is a gift. Build a pace you can hold for 10 years because that is the timeline. Things aren't going to change overnight. Rest is not desertion. It is how you make sure that there is someone left to do the work. Remember, we're like a choir. When one of us takes a break and stops singing, the rest of us will carry the load. All right, one last question. Everybody in the chat, what gives you hope right now? One sentence, it can be enormous or it can be tiny. A person, a moment, a win, a kid, anything.
Seeking out and spending time with art and nature has brought some peace. Growing resistance gives hope. What else? Changing one person's mind and the love here. Taking walks in the mountains with my dog. My daughter gives me hope. There are always people who will fight for the true America, liberty and justice for all. Sustained resistance. There are so many people opposing this. That gives me hope and piping. Elections going our way. Yep, I'm very hopeful for that. Knowing that the number of brother and sister warriors is increasing. The truth. I can't not do it. Resisting is what gives me hope. Seeing more people get involved, seeing people not giving up, standing up to the concentration camps to the point of getting shot. That is true. My grandkids' spirit supporting the good ultimately with our assistance. Give people jobs to do and accept their work without micromanaging or being critical. If they have an idea, let them develop and run with it. I hope more people will join us and feel their power. That Trump is so unpopular. Um, Someone said this was so much needed today, and thank you. And you are so welcome. It was Katie and Sean that suggested it and volunteered to do the research and add their own input. A few more things that give us hope. My Somali students, the Trump administration losing court cases. Every day is a new day. Honks when we're protesting. Yep, honks when we're on street corners or like at our overpass protest where we'll be. Last one, Sherry said, it gives me hope that we have a chance to vote out some representatives that have not represented Colorado. Agreed. So that's what we're running on. Let me drop some resources in the chat and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, I got an email today from No Kings, and this is how it started out. This isn't the message we wanted to write. Our Good Trouble Lives On weekend of action had the lowest turnout of any No Kings event so far. 88% of supporters like you didn't know it was happening, and there was almost no coverage in the national press. So I did the Good Trouble Lives On last year. I had 250 people show up. This year I had 20. First No Kings, 3,500 people. Second No Kings, 1,500 people. Third No Kings, 250 people. So when they asked for a response, I said burnout, which is exactly what we're talking about tonight. I think a lot of people were really excited the first couple months of last year, and then maybe they felt like they did their duty and they went to a protest and that was it. And Solidarity Warriors is exactly about what happens afterwards. We need a sustained movement. and burnout is real. And I mean, everything I saw in the chat is real. Like I've got pain in my back. Um, I'm not going to be able to do as, I've done 40 protests in the last year. I'm going to have to stop. But that doesn't mean like that I'm not going to continue teaching people, staying in the movement. So I just really appreciate the space because this is real. Like I know people that have been protesting since 1963 and they never thought they'd have to do it today, but we got to keep doing it. We can't stop.
And, I think part of it is people came out to No Kings and they had the expectation that there'll be this big protest and then everything will change. And that's just not the way it works. It's a starting point and you need the sustained momentum. I think the Good Trouble this year was not publicized. It was not organized. It was not put out nationally the way it was the year before. And I think those things make a difference. I also think it makes a difference when, they say there's going to be this big rally and nobody shows up. And, there needs to be some organizing in that to make sure that it works. And the protests are great and they are very important. But the expectation that that is all of a sudden going to wave a magic wand and make this all go away isn't going to happen. So, Evelyn, I appreciate you being patient. We do normally wait until the end for questions, so go ahead and ask your question.
Um, Actually, I just wanted to add, I think the stuff that you guys have shared about burnout and strategies have been phenomenal. And there's been a ton of them, and they've covered a whole range of things. And I think that's wonderful. I just wanted to add one little dimension, and I think it works for me and some of the people I know. Um, I think for me, it's important, and I've seen it with others, to have a regular practice, not something that happens when you feel you need it, but something that you do every single day, and something that takes you deeper into who you are, who you love, what you care about, what's important in this life, and that may not you may not see it think it's directly related to the movement, but staying grounded and staying in that deep place most days, as a regular kind of practice. I have a neighbor next door. I happen to be a meditator, but a neighbor next door who grabs a cup of coffee and goes out into her backyard, and she uses affirmations, but she grounds herself in who she is, what she values before she begins the day. I think if we can stay grounded, that's another way to keep going for the long haul, like you were saying, Morgan.
Thanks so much, Evelyn. It's good to see you. Even it doesn't have to be a question. So if you want to just share your strategy for recovering, Aaron.
Yeah, I just wanted to share. I know you guys are doing a lot of work with the detention centers in Colorado, Aurora, and everywhere. We've got this thing through Freedom Church called Free Families, and every night at 7 p.m., no matter where you are, it doesn't matter your time zone, we sing this song, and we created it with the kids in the detention centers in Dilley, down in Texas. And if you guys, I'll put it in the chat, but I'll say it's really quick if you want me to sing it. And this is something that we do to ground ourselves every day and to stand the fight, but I can do it later if you don't have time.
No, go for it, please.
Yeah.
Drop the lyrics in the chat and then sing it.
Yeah. And we do it in English and Spanish. I'll have to put it in the chat, but it goes like this. I sing from here and you sing from there. Together we'll sing down the walls everywhere. With love in our hearts like the waves of the sea. Together we'll sing until everyone's free. And then you just repeat it. Every night at 7 o'clock we do that, and we've had people traveling to Dilley, Delaney, Aurora, everywhere across the country, and they're actually highlighted on the last No Kings. We had a Rise Up Sing Out, and it was, I think it was on like a Sunday or Saturday, but it was anyway. A lot of people didn't know about it, and I didn't realize that my friends were going to be there on stage. But they were able to sing these songs, and they were actually working with Miss Rachel. I think she was on PBS, and she was one of the first people to stand up for trans students and trans kids, and they worked together to write all these songs. So I'll put in the chat like the words and a little link.
That was really awesome.
Yeah, I love it. Foster, go ahead.
I'm in Boulder, Colorado, and as well as going to all the No Kings Day events, which have been, when they've happened, they've been usually drawing a couple thousand people or so. Um, and but every Saturday, about 20 of us meet on a really busy corner in Canyon and Broadway in Boulder, and we have our protest signs and flags, and um, a lot of it's around the Palestinian cause, but also about no ICE and various other things, Cuba and Venezuela and Iran, you know, and that all, I think with the No Kings thing, we have to also include the idea of no billionaires controlling the country, because they're the ones that are behind the so-called kings, like puppet Trump or whatever he is, and um, and it's tricky, it's definitely an uphill battle, but we do what we can and hope that spirit will do the rest to make things better.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
Foster.
much.
And you make a good point.
Somebody, sorry, the mention of No Kings made me think back to something someone asked in the chat or mentioned in the chat, was that the national protests seem to be gone or not important anymore. But one thing that I know is that National has decided to space out the No Kings protest more, so that people don't get burnout. I think that was a lesson that hopefully they took from the lower attendance at No Kings 3. So what I've heard is they're just going to have 2 this year. So I'm hoping it'll be right before the election.
And one of the things that Foster brought up is there is no act that is too small. Do not feel like you need to organize tens of thousands of people to make a difference. We hear so often people in this group and across the country, red states, blue states, a couple of people going out on a street corner and waving signs can be very powerful to just as many people as a huge protest downtown. So, don't think that there's only one way to do things, and don't think that it needs to be this giant lift to get something done so that you get burned out about it.
One thing I'd say about that, Morgan, is if you only have 5 people show up to a protest, those are the 5 most gangster people in your city, and you need to use that as a base building opportunity and pull them in and give them a task with, all together, like just bring them in.
I absolutely agree that, if you go out and you have 50,000 people show up, that's one thing. But when only 5 people show up, that takes courage. Like, that's not an easy thing to do, being one of 5 people out there. It's like the first person who goes into a mosh pit and is walking, dancing around by themselves until everybody else gets in it. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that kind of thing.
There is a great video of that where this guy is on the side of a fence. I think it might have been in a Colorado festival, honestly. And he's just being a goofball. And then all of a sudden, you see everybody flock to it. And then it's just a mosh pit. It was amazing.
It's the same thing. It is exactly the same thing.
And I think the honk and wave street corner protests and overpass protests are a really great way to fill up your activist cup. We get hundreds of honks every time we do an overpass protest, and I'm sure the street corners do as well. And the one or two people that flip us off, I like to blow kisses at them. Encourage the men to blow kisses at them because I feel like that will upset them even more.
That is a really hard thing to learn, though. Like the first couple months that I was doing it, I yelled at people and called them Nazis, and now I just say God bless you. But it really is a practice, like that you have the nonviolent 24/7 is really tough. It's really tough.
Mhm.
And this may sound a little weird, but sometimes attending an event that you're not organizing, that you have no responsibility for, and just go and participate and have fun can be a great way to bring that stress level down, where you don't need to make sure that everybody is having a good time and everything is going according to plan. And you can just go there and be part of it. This is for all of the people who are not into the mindfulness and meditation and all of that stuff the way I kind of am. When I need to go and do something that's not activism. I need to do some woodworking, some metalworking, work on a car, build something, do something that's just not this for a while, an hour, 2 hours, half a day, a weekend. And it kind of reframes my mind and kind of gets me out of the space of being burnt out. And I can see that what I did and then take that energy and turn around and be less burnt out. For me, you talk about the fatigue and the muscles. My collarbones, these muscles right here, I can feel tense up and they can get hard enough to beat like a drum. And that's when I know I need to do something to just get out of things, settle down, and reframe things. One of my favorite things to do since coming to Denver, when I get like that, is just get in my car and drive up into the mountains and drive the twisty, turny roads and just be in that place with nature, seeing the views and concentrating on that because that has always brought me peace. And having what works for you kind of in your back pocket saying, no, you know what, I just need to get out for a few minutes and do something, is incredibly useful when it comes to avoiding burnout.
I think that sounds like an excellent idea to go to a protest where I have no responsibilities. So I'm going to delegate the entire organizing of the next No Kings to you guys. All right.
What's that like?
Yeah.
This is why I'm encouraging you to do it.
Yeah, I'm going to try to do it.
Oh, and I know that feeling too of what is it like to not be responsible for everything that's going on and feeling like, everything I go to, I'm working instead of participating. And, that's part of the price I pay for organizing some of these things. But sometimes, that can lead you to burnout, and it's good to go to somebody else's thing.
Find community, yes, that is very important. And sometimes it's finding community outside of activism, like a knitting group or a crafting group. I just found out about a maker space in Denver, so I'm gonna check that out. Of course, I'll be there making banners, but
Did you say go ahead, Paisley?
I
I'm in
did.
Kansas City. I have a question for you. Of
Sure.
all the participants here, which at one time it was over 80 in this group, I would like to know how many people you recognize, I'm just interested in how many of the people that are attending tonight's function go out and protest regularly with you?
How many people we recognize from protests? Is
Yeah.
that what you're asking? Oh, well, I would require everyone to turn on their camera. I don't always know names, but there are people that I know are here every week. Um, I'm gonna name a handful. Don't get mad if I leave you out. Demetrios, Evelyn, or
I've
let's
not been to a
see,
protest,
Aaron's
but I've
always
been here.
here.
Yeah. I've
Yep,
not,
exactly.
Yep.
yeah.
Aaron's
We,
always here. I know he's protesting in his own state. Dana, who you heard from earlier, she's at every protest at the table for either the immigrant partnership teams or the whistle kits. Yeah, let me put it in a view where I can see everybody.
and Paisley, it's a little hard for me to answer that question. I'd say I recognize about half the people that have been on the call, but we get people from all over the country coming. So we wouldn't have seen them at protests in other places. But we know that because they're here, they're going out and doing work. And I spent a lot of time in St. Louis, so I'm very familiar with Kansas City and what things are
Okay.
like there, and organizing there, and some of the difficulties that you can have that aren't quite the same in Colorado.
And some people aren't able to get out there physically, and there's plenty of organizing that can be done from home too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was gonna say our brother Jeffrey has taken this week off for mental health, just for a burnout thing. So like it's not a problem for anybody to do that. Like you're not good for anybody if you're not good for yourself, right? Like, you got to get out of bed, you got to eat, you got to do everything. Just keep it up.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And you know, don't think that we're immune to it. I just had to step back from a group I've been in a year and a half, maybe, trying to build something, simply because I couldn't meet the commitments I was wanting to make with them. And, I just had to say, look, after self-reflection, I can't do it. And I had to set that boundary and I had to say no. And it wasn't easy because they're good people. I love what they're doing, but I just don't have the bandwidth to add that much more work into what I'm already doing.
All right, how about Foster?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, there's about 20 of us that meet every week on a busy corner, hold signs every Saturday, rain or shine, winter, summer, heat or cold. And before that, there was a group called Ladies in Black that would just stand silently. And there's also a Quaker group that I think meets regularly on the mall with signs. And like somebody mentioned in the chat, making calls or writing to Congress is also a way, so I heard the calls are the most effective. And so I try to do that every week too, call reps and even the president, even though I don't know if he's influenceable, to
Yeah,
send an email. You know,
it
yeah,
feels good anyway.
well, yeah, it's just like, it's just like, well, maybe they count the number of people that don't want the war happening. I don't know what, or whatever, and just tell them that, or maybe he looks at a few of them, probably not, but anyway, there's a lot of ways we can do stuff.
Absolutely.
Let
All
me
right,
let,
well, I'm
let, let
gonna
me
drop.
ask you let me ask you the question real quick that I got on that email. What do you think the reason that the protest turnouts have declined? Do you think it's a general malaise?
I think the reason they've been on the decline is, like Morgan said, people thought they were going to show up once, and there were millions of people, and why didn't anything change? So why should I keep showing up to protest? And then also burnout on top of that. the John Lewis event specifically, and this is kind of fucked up, but and it goes back to podcast again, but one of the podcast hosts says, when we have black guests on this show, half of you don't listen to the episode. And that's really messed up. And so I do wonder if racism plays a part in why people don't get as excited about John Lewis events. But in general, I think that it is burnout. And the John Lewis one wasn't advertised very well, for lack of a better term. I literally got one email about organizing it, and then maybe it was at like the end of an indivisible email.
If you read that email, they quoted my complaint, and
Oh, good.
it was about how, like, why is No Kings? Why are we promoting No Kings and No Kings isn't promoting us? And
Yeah.
I saw that from the beginning. Like I was the first person on the entire map in the United States, so I was talking to Christine Woods the whole time, and I just could not figure out like why there wasn't more publicity. I was the only person in Oklahoma that had an event. Like it's just ridiculous. Like when No
Well,
Kings happens, everybody's on board. When something else
so,
happens, maybe.
so my understanding
Yeah.
is
And
last year, Good Trouble was put in the coalition of No Kings and was publicized as a national event the way the other No Kings were. My
it
impression
was
this
on
year
Thursday.
is that it wasn't, and that it was up to local people to go and do whatever they wanted. But if you're not having the support and the media and news, you're not going to get big events.
Well, and
And that's part of it.
No Kings didn't start advertising it until 2 weeks ago, or 2 weeks before last weekend. So like they were late to the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it wasn't organized nationally in a way to make it successful. Let me put it that way. In addition, one of the reasons, and this is looking behind the curtain a little bit, certainly in Denver, but I suspect it's other places as well. There's starting to be friction within the movement between some of the far left groups, some of the other groups, and it wouldn't surprise me if that turned into chaos organizing other places. And it was inevitable. It was going to happen eventually. And part of solidarity and what we do is learning to overcome that and have everybody work together. But I think it does play a role in kind of what happened and why fewer people turned out.
So
Yeah.
so
All
how
right.
can we decentralize this and bring it back to the grassroots and not let people like 5051, No Kings, and whatever control this? Because you got 70 people, 80 people on here tonight. All the different groups I'm in are totally self-sufficient. Why are we relying on somebody that's getting donor money to make, a march on Washington happen?
Morgan's been talking about a bus carpool to Washington for a while, but I want to get to the hands that are up, and then Morgan, you can talk about your road trip.
Yeah, I'll come back to that.
All right, Demetrius.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem for me, I don't like to go to the protest. I don't feel safe. So the Democrats need to work really hard, the mayor and the whole party, to make sure that the police agree with the Democrats and that the majority of us are Democrat and no MAGA and everything's cool. I think it needs to be in a safe, for me, that's how I think of that's how I would join if I felt safe around my party.
Okay. And that's totally reasonable. Everybody has their own personal risk threshold.
Mhm.
So tomorrow night, some people are going back to the Aurora Ice facility where somebody was literally shot last week. They weren't killed, but they were shot
Mhm.
by an
And,
ice. But that's not for everybody. So Whatever your personal level of risk is, evaluate that and be honest with yourself. And it's okay to have those boundaries.
Okay, thank you.
And, a well-organized protest, particularly ours are nonviolent and peaceful. You can't control what the police are going to do, but there are ways to make sure that the protests and the protesters are safe, well-trained safety marshals, plans ahead of time, contingencies for when and if things go wrong. If there are agitators who come in with the intent of causing trouble with the police and being able to uh, contain that are all things that are important. My experience has largely been that protests are peaceful, and if they're organized to be peaceful, a lot of times that's what you get. And you should be able to know and hear from the organizers what to expect ahead of time. And if they're going to do something that's expecting trouble, you should know it and consent to going to that and not wind up going to something that you think is going to be a peaceful protest that winds up in a riot. In addition to that, if here's an example: if the organizers are planning on something that can get you arrested, do they know? Do you know exactly what you're going to be doing? Do you know exactly what your laws you're going to be breaking? Do they have a bail fund so that they can get you out of jail? Do they have lawyers waiting for you so that they're going to represent you? But generally, and we've talked about this in the past quite a lot about organizing a protest and how to do it, how to make sure it's peaceful, how to be safe. When you go, even if you don't know that it's going to be safe, there are still things that you can do to take care of yourself and go to a protest. And then when you start seeing things devolve, get out of the way before it becomes a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And Morgan, I think one of the things you said last week was about like when you look at these different groups, are you willing to stand with us? One. Are you willing to die for us? Two. Are you willing to kill for us? Three. Those are big red flags. And like what you're walking into. And I
Yeah.
think any protest at night is a red flag.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't promote nighttime protests, especially if we don't know who the organizers are, because generally after dark they are looking to have a confrontation with police. So we don't want to promote those to our newsletter of 20,000 people and have people not know absolutely what they're in for.
I'm in rural Wyoming, really red state. 85% Republican in our county, 70% Trump supporters. So we had a No Kings protest in March, and we're not anonymous. Everybody knows who we are. Our neighbors know who we are. Um, but we've been focused on getting out the vote and getting some candidates to change the direction. And I think that's one of the reasons why the protests aren't the focus now is we're focused on the election and getting vote out, which I think is really critical. We've had some people that really were activated by the protests and we had a few clowns, float by, but we had very positive performance. But we've got we're nobody's going to win a primary in this state unless they're Republican. Okay, that's just the way it is. So we're focused on getting some moderate Republican candidates. We've had forums. We're going to have our younger people are organized a candidate forum coming up before our primaries in August 18th. So that's what we're doing. I think, and we would love to do regular protests, but we just don't have it's just very difficult to do that here. We don't have an overpass. We're not on a major highway, those types of things. So, but somebody said today, every little thing matters. And we've got people that write, we wrote 3,000 postcards for our legislative Senate candidate, who's a moderate Republican. Okay, we did that in the last month. So there are things you can do, and everything matters. So anyway, thank you very much for all the information, and everybody has great ideas.
Bonnie, go ahead.
I wanted to talk about the protests also. There's a protest, lots of them in my area every week. And the one that's closest to me, I went pretty much every Saturday. Then 3 weeks in a row, something violent happened. Not anything that we did. We weren't doing anything different, but people were really upset about us being there. And then the third time they were messing with our cars. And now you're talking a chunk of change. You're talking a chunk of change. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go someplace else because there's lots of protests near me living in Southern California. The other place I was looking into going, I found out that I guess somebody was there, police or somebody, shooting rubber bullets, and 2 people were blinded for life. And that said, now, wait a minute here. We're talking about either a chunk of change or being blinded for life. And so that kind of dulled my interest in protesting, even though I would like to. It seems like the safety is just too strong. A safety risk is too strong right now. And that's bad because the more of us they push out, the more they win. But it doesn't seem like there's anybody going to stop it. I even after the third Saturday, I went to the police. I took some pictures. I filed a police report. Gave them the pictures, and I came back a few days later and said, "Have you sent anybody over there to look if there are any ring cameras there about the people who mess with our cars?" And they wouldn't answer the question. So I'm kind of assuming they probably didn't do anything. If they had bigger fish to fry, and they weren't going to do anything about it.
That sucks.
So
But
none of this is
I would
without risk.
say, one thing that is helpful is if you find out if a protest had safety marshals. They are there to de-escalate, whether it's with counter protesters or the police. So find a group that's in your area that you trust to organize a safe protest. That might mean reaching out to find an indivisible group in your area. That's just one avenue I have that I can put a link in the chat to find your nearest indivisible group.
I'll second having good safety marshals is important. I will say none of this is without risk, to the point that I am taking preparations in case I need to bug out very quickly to make sure that myself and my family are protected. And a lot of it is very specific to your location. I told Paisley I spent a lot of time in St. Louis, Missouri, which is very different than doing this work in Denver, Colorado. And the police force can be completely different from not only one city to another, but the next jurisdiction over can be completely different. Here the police are generally calm and let the protesters do what they want, even if they start getting extreme. In St. Louis, I would literally watch them kettle protesters and beat them senseless. And how they react, when they react, all of that really is situational. There's no one thing that's going to happen all the time. And a lot of it is dependent on who are the people who are coming and damaging your cars. If the police are the ones who are shooting the rubber bullets at you, it's very reasonable to take precautions about that. Some of the things we talk about are materials that you can use in case you get tear gassed to prevent yourself. But the same can go for being if you're going to be shot at with rubber bullets. Have safety goggles, full face masks, Kevlar jackets like you're riding a motorcycle. All of those things can be used to mitigate those things. And sometimes it's better to just have it somewhere else. There is nobody can do any good if they're dead. Nobody can do it any good if they're bodily harmed and injured. And that is not why we're doing this. It does happen. People get hurt. We just, as Tiffany said, had somebody get shot here by an off-duty ICE or geo agent. And, I'm not going to, sugarcoat it and say any protest you go to, you're going to be safe. But there are things that you can do to increase your safety and decrease the risk. And here in Denver, it's pretty safe that you can go out and assume that the protests are going to be safe before dark. But in some place like Wyoming or Oklahoma or even parts of California, that's not a guarantee. And particularly in the red states that are sympathetic to the administration, do not be surprised if the police is going to make it as hard as they can on you. If they're going to deny you permits because you don't have $1 million of insurance for your event, all of those things expect to happen. And sometimes you need to break the rules to make your point. And if you do, there are potential consequences. The important part is to go in knowing the risks and what you're getting into and how you can mitigate them, and if mitigating them is enough to make you comfortable going. And if these things are too much for you to be comfortable going, don't go. I don't want you to go and get your car damaged. I don't want you to lose your sight because of rubber bullets. There are so many other things that you can do that. But in your particular instance, it's important to be able to document what's happening. Everybody has a cell phone. You take pictures of the people who are, even set a safety marshal to videotape the cars and watch over them while this is happening and send the video to the police, because that's a crime. The police should be obligated to go and do something about it. That's where what their job is. But your safety and taking care of yourself is a high priority that is not something to trivialize.
Morgan, Tiffany, I want to piggyback on that and just say that I think there's a detriment in people being taught nonviolence. Like when we're talking about nonviolence, we're talking about nonviolence towards the state, the police, the National Guard. When there's people, like random people coming into the crowd and causing violence, people need to deal with that, right? Like you're not going to just stand there and watch somebody get beat down. So I think like that we need to empower people to like defend themselves, stop issues, call the cops, hold them down. Like we've had people with AR-15s, knives, fighting. Like I've had to hold down a lot of people, and I want to make a difference between fighting the state in nonviolence and fighting crazy hillbillies that run into the crowd. Like nobody needs to stand there and watch somebody get beat up.
It sounds like you're not even fighting, you're defending. You're not the aggressor in that situation.
And, nonviolence is one of those things that everybody knows what it means, but it means something different to everybody. And, sometimes that means defending yourself and making sure that you don't get harmed. Sometimes that means not being aggressive in what you're doing. And some people think you can be nonviolent and cause a lot of problems. And a lot of it depends on your boundaries and your personal belief system. But I want to say that we care very much about people's health, lives, and property. That we don't want people going out, and it gives us a bad name if people come to our protests and leave with a bad experience. Demetrius, did you want to say something else?
I'm looking for a protest in Arizona, but I don't know. It's just particularly where I'm located, right?
Mm-hmm.
How is the Southwest and Southeast regions? this Southwest?
I've known several people who were organizing in New Mexico, specifically Santa Fe. I know there are events that happen in Arizona. The best thing that I can do is one, suggest you get connected with one of the groups that's been organizing regularly, particularly one that's connected to the national movements. And when a big protest is coming up, a lot of times they will put a map out of all of the different places where people have signed up to host an event. And that's going to be the best place to find something in your area.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. My idea for a road trip protest, this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time.
Yes, sir.
We live in a blue state. We can get 10,000 people to come out on a fairly easy basis, right? But getting 10,000 people to come out to Tulsa is going to be a lot harder. Or in Wyoming, it's going to be a lot harder. My idea, take the 10,000 people in Colorado and take them to Missouri, take them to Kansas, take them to Tulsa, and support the people there. And when 10,000 people show up in that place, it will get people's attention. And, one of the things I wanted to tell Tom about is there are like-minded people there. You don't see them. They are so buried underground, they're afraid to say anything. But they're there. And even the people who come out and say they're diehard MAGA Republicans, if you put a minimum wage bill on the ballot, they'll vote for it. If you put a Medicaid expansion on the ballot, they'll vote for it because it's good for them. And they know that. But their identity is so wrapped up in being MAGA and Republican, they're not going to do what's good for them. But if it doesn't have a D next to it, people will come out and vote for it. And if you get 10,000 people coming out to these places, people are going to start to worry this is moving just beyond California and New York and Colorado. And they're going to take it seriously. But the people who are on the fence, the people who don't like what's going on, even though they feel like they're Republican, may take a second look and look at things in a different perspective. So, that's my thought. And that's something that I want to get organized. But it is very difficult to get those logistics ready. It's almost going to have to be, all right, we're going, find your way there, and we'll organize. So I'm looking for places that we could do something like that and other groups that we could partner with and help organize in places like that, even if we don't ever wind up getting there.
So we've got kind of something similar to that on August 1st. It's the 60th anniversary of Martin Luther King's speech in Chicago, and we've got buses going across the country there. And the people that are organizing that, Morgan, I'd love to get you in touch with.
Because I would love to go to Chicago for
Yeah,
protest.
and for other people that are interested, I'm going to try to find this link real quick, and you can sign up, you can register, and then there's buses going across the country. They're just not going through my area, but like the Northeast, the Southeast, they're all coming to Chicago. And this is going to be amazing, guys. Like August 1st is the 60th anniversary of Martin Luther King's speech in Chicago. And then August 28th, Reverend Al Sharpton is doing one of the March on Washington 60th anniversaries in Washington, D.C. And there's going to be buses available. And if you get this bus to Chicago, if you register and get on the bus, they're going to pay for your lodging, your food, everything. Morgan, thank you so much for your leadership, and Tiffany and Sean and everybody. You guys are just, there's no other group that does this on a weekly basis that creates the grounding, provides the grounding that you guys do. There's a lot of, activist communities and stuff that do something once a month. You guys are on the ground every day, and you're giving us a space just to be us. And thank you.
You're welcome. And that's why we do what we do. And that's why we started doing this, because there was a space and it needed to be filled and it needed to have somebody saying these things, and there just wasn't. And you know, that's what brought Tiffany and I together, and that's why we do what we do. And you know, we do what we know and what we do well, and that's what I encourage people to do. You know, if you have skills, go out and volunteer with what you do. Somebody needs that help, and you know, that's how we wound up doing this. All right. I think that is a pretty good place to stop.